manager and says, you know, when this comes out, when they start casting for this, please try to get me an audition. That was 2017. A year later, my manager emails and said, hey, they're casting for Warrior and they want to see you. And I was like, whoa, you know, amazing. Okay, so I look at the role and it said Father June. And the breakdown was 60s to 70s year old, shock of white hair, you know, tongue leader, fierce tongue leader. And I went, okay, that's not me, but I'm going to read the text and see how I can identify with this character. And so I'm reading it, and right away, it just told the story of Chinatown for me. Like the character had two monologues. I don't know if you all saw episode one when Assam comes in and I tell him, you know, like to bow, you know, to his ancestors. And then the second scene in that episode, I tell him why I started the Hawaiians is to prevent the violence from the ducks upon our people. So right away, I saw, man, this character is telling the story of Chinatown and the fight against racism of his people. So I honed in on that and said, how can I make that me, Perry Young?
Mhm.
And I went to the audition, and you know, I didn't think I was gonna get it, like, you know, but I just tried my hardest. And there's a little interesting side story with that is the day, you know, I like to meditate just to clear my mind before auditions. And the day of that audition, I was meditating in the morning. It's not long, you know, like 20 minutes. And then my partner kind of sticks her head in the door and says, aren't you taking our son to his high school orientation today, this
Uh-oh,
morning? I
uh-oh.
was like, oh my God, I have to take him to his high school orientation, which I completely forgot about an
Uh-oh,
hour or 2 hours before my audition. There goes all the chill out time, right? So
oh.
we go to LaGuardia. I sit through all the lectures about what he should do as a first year student, as a sophomore. How do you find your locker? Where's your counselor? What do you do at lunch? And I'm helping him trying to figure all this stuff out. But at the same time, I'm in my head, I'm going, I gotta like release all of this before I go to my audition. This thing is going overtime, right? The orientation. And I'm getting a little nervous. I'm like, you know, we might have to cut out before it's over. I don't know how you feel about that. And you know, my son's looking at me like, are you kidding me? This is high school. This is my life. You know, I'm like, okay, you know. So it went a little over. We got out. I put him in a cab, sent him home. I got in the cab and I went downtown where the audition office was. I get in just 5 minutes before my start. And I went, oh, good. I got 5 minutes. I'm going to just close my eyes and breathe. So I get in there and I close my eyes, and immediately the assistant comes out and says, "Oh, Perry Young, are you ready?" And I was like, "Oh shoot, there goes my 5 minutes." Um, I went, I went, yes, sure, you know. So I go in, I'm just like letting it all go, right? Letting all that stress go from before, you know, because as an actor, the camera is like a magnifying glass. It's right on your face. It reads everything you do. As a film and television actor, you almost think it and the camera projects it. So I had to release all that stress before. And, you know, I go in there and she says, okay, you know, tell us your name, where you're from, and whenever you're ready. And my audition was basically two monologues. And it's actually, they're harder to do than conversation monologues. And in that, for actors, you just talk to somebody and they see your reaction and it feels very natural. But when you have to do a monologue to a screen, it feels like very artificial and you really have to like just hone into what you're telling this camera, and hopefully the camera grabs, you know, your natural abilities, your naturalness as a human being, which is a very unnatural moment when you think about it. So I'm there and I said, tell him my name, you know, Perry Young, 5'8", New York City, and here's Father June's first monologue. And so I do it, you know, and I think I did pretty good. And then she stops the camera and goes, just drop everything you're doing. They want someone really solid. Just let's try it again. And in my mind, that's like the last thing you want to hear is the auditioner saying, you weren't, that wasn't any good. So I was like, oh my God, I've been waiting for this moment for a year. I can't blow this. This is Bruce Lee. You know, this is the role I was made for. This is the best thing I can do in TV today.
And you
Right.
got it. And
Well, I
you
turned around.
uh,
I had my back to her and I went, okay, I took my moment to
character.
meditate.
Get in
I
character.
took my moment to meditate and I went, the first thing that came to my mind was be like water.
Ah,
And I was like, oh, Bruce is here to help me, you know? Turned around, did my monologue. And she went, oh, good. Let's do the next one. I was like, woo. Okay, so I did the next one. She goes, great. Okay, yeah. Well, thanks for coming in. And that's how they all
Don't
go.
call us.
Thanks for coming in. Yeah, don't
Don't
call
call
us.
us.
We'll
We'll
call
call
you.
you. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And 3 days later, over Labor Day weekend, I knew it was a long weekend. And normally, once I do an audition, I just let it go because, actors do like 20 auditions before they get one role. If you're lucky, you can do 100 auditions and not get a role. So I normally just let it go. It's done. I did my best. There was an audience, that showed them what I was made of. Doesn't come to, eventually, it's not about rejection. You let it all go. It's probably not going to happen.
Mhm,
Like Robert De Niro says, when you do an audition, you're probably not going to get it. So just have fun.
mhm.
So I had my fun. Um, but then it was a 3-day weekend. I was going, oh my God, I know I'm not going to hear from them for 3 days. So 3 days came by, I didn't hear from them. And then on Tuesday, when the Labor Day weekend was over, I got a call. My manager says, Warrior wants you. And I was like, I screamed, because it was like the most amazing moment in my life. It was like, I'm here because of Bruce Lee. I'm an actor because of Bruce Lee, and now I get to do something that's directly related to Bruce Lee. It was quite one of those amazing moments of my life. Yeah,
Speaking of Bruce Lee, what I read was that you grew up not too far from his school. His school,
correct.
right? Yeah. So you
Yeah.
never seen him? You
Well, I was too young, I Oakland, California. So Bruce Lee was born in San Francisco. And he had his first kung fu studio. I mean, he went back to Hong Kong, to shoot movies and to train. And he came back to California to teach and to try to find a life as an actor. Um, and then he started a family. And in order to raise a family, he started teaching kung fu in Oakland, California, in the '60s. So he was started to teach to non-Chinese, which
Mhm.
caused a rife in the
Right,
community.
right.
um, and my teacher at the time, I was too young, but I did have a teacher, like with my brothers, because I had two older brothers. And just to keep us busy after school, my dad signed us up for Kung Fu lessons with Jack Man Wong. If some of you know the Kung Fu mythology, Wong Jackman is the guy that fought Bruce Lee, the mythical fight. And so he was my teacher. So years after that, I realized I heard about the fight and goes, oh my God, that's my teacher. And then I remember hearing that Bruce had left after the fight. Like, I don't really know who won and all that stuff, that's all conjecture. But I remember that the fight happened, and yeah, so Bruce Lee was the hometown kid that made it big. And boy, did he make it big.
But that's pretty amazing that you got this role, and it's a Bruce Lee movie, a drama, I should say, and you were not too far from him growing up. So we have one question, which was also one of my questions. Like, what is? And we're jumping in, but these are
That's
things.
okay.
Watching an episode, I was like, what is with this word onion? What is the word onion? Because everybody's watching, right? Raise your hand. Everybody's like, what is this word that you hop ways calling each other onions? What is that reference to?
Some of it comes from the producers, Jonathan Tropper, the writer, the showrunner, the person who created, basically put it all into a story, created the characters with Shannon and Justin. They wanted to find a stylistic dialogue, that vernacular of the period, of these people, to create their own world, to give it flavor. So we believe that they're in a world that's separate from our world. So things like calling them ducks and onions and
Okay, I was gonna get to
scrapping
that.
and
I was gonna get to ducks.
yeah. Yeah, and you get me, it's like a language of gangsters and all that. So they wanted to create a language that these guys had that gave them their unique world.
Because when I kept hearing it over and over again, I was thinking, how do you say onion in Cantonese? Is that like, sometimes you have a synonym and does that mean
Mhm.
something else? Is that like, like some other name, an endearing name? I couldn't figure it out, but now that you explained it, thank you. I was like, what is with this ducks and these onions? And I think there was one more. There was another one. Oh, so phrase crossing the salt, meaning going across the ocean, right? I guess.
Right.
Right. Oh, okay. Oh, I got one. I got one.
Yeah, they wanted to come up with their own slang,
Right. Oh, okay.
because they're all street slang, street
Mhm.
guys, right?
Go
And,
with the
and
flow.
street language is full of slangs.
Okay.
So crossing their salt was a way of saying immigrating.
So let's just go ahead and so we can have some time for some of the attendees questions. We want to talk about episodes 8, 9, and 10 of season 2. And I have to say it was very intense. I was like screaming. I was like, ah! I was watching it on my iPad. I was just screaming, not just because it was graphic, because you got like the fighting scene, the slicing and all that. I was just screaming because I just was just it was just so intense. I never felt that way in a long time.
Mm.
And my I used to go see movies with my dad in Chinatown a lot. And I was this, I was this tomboy. So at the end, and maybe that's what boys do now. At the end, after they watch a fight scene, they want to kind of act it. I would act this out on the walk back home, kind of like because you have all this energy watching it, and I was just like doing that like after the iPad. I was just screaming. My daughter actually came down. Are you okay? I'm watching live. I'm screaming. She was like, "Oh, okay." I was wondering if anybody else was screaming like that too. Um, but we talked. As I was watching the episode, everything I was watching kind of resonates sadly to what we're going through right now. Right? I mean, I don't know. What were you thinking when you were shooting those episodes?
Well, I'm going to go back to the beginning of when I got cast, just to get to the end. When I got cast, reading the script. The first thing that hit me was this show is about America. This show is about racism in America. This show is about how the political power, our demagogues, and capitalism drives all of that into, you know, finding the cheapest labor and then pitting the most recent immigrants against each other. And we have that today when immigrants are pitted against each other still, right? Mexicans now are the Chinese, or the Muslim was 10 years
Right,
ago.
right.
So, and the Irish was before the Chinese. And if you watch Gangs of New York, they say the same thing, that the more recent immigrants that are getting off the boat, people are trying to recruit them for power because, it's about numbers and the most recent immigrants. Um, because, white supremacy and capitalism forces people to fight for the little bits that we have, right? So that's where our problems come from in America, is that people of color are oppressed, and women, and we have to fight for the little bit that we have, while that 1% got so rich. Like, for example, Jeff Bezos just got richer than ever in the pandemic, and so the richer keeps getting richer.
Right, right.
So that's what Warrior was about from the very beginning when I read the script. So it was such a joy to finally do something important in television when all my other roles, on network TV were just crappy roles. You're telling the story to serve. I'm being a character to tell the story that Hollywood wants you to know. But in Warrior, it comes from the heart. It's a story that Bruce Lee wants you to know. Like,
Yeah, I
Bruce Lee
felt
wants you
that
to
way.
know our struggle.
Yeah, I felt that way. I felt that when I was watching it. It was I understood it in a way that this was our history, but I felt it was written in a way for the non-Asians to understand it too. Like
Mhm.
lessons that lessons they didn't get in school, which same thing like we didn't get it, right? But it was something like it was a teaching moment for the non-Asians. And I'm wondering if anyone in the cast or even background was it a revelation to them reading the script and knowing that this occurred?
I think it was. I think we all knew, as Asian Americans, you have a deeper understanding of history. If you're Asian American, and I want to quote James Baldwin: if you're black and you're not pissed off, you're in denial.
Mm.
So I think if you're Asian American and you're not pissed off, you're in denial.
I was really
So
pissed off watching those videos. I felt like it was I see my people getting beat up, and it's happening now. We're getting attacked,
I,
unprovoked attacks. And I
I
felt like, oh my God, this is still the 1800s right now.
exactly. And so as we read the script and we're portraying these characters, it starts to resonate even deeper than we expected, because our unconscious,
Mhm.
collective unconscious, started to work out into our acting, and we're like, oh my God, I'm experiencing what my grandfather experienced. My great grandfather experienced this stuff getting off the boat. When Assam walked off the boat, seeing "Go Home Chinese" in the very
Yeah,
episode 1,
yeah.
my great great grandfather walked off that boat to those signs. And as I was filming and watching it, it all came up out of me. Like, I didn't think it would in that way, but it's in there. That's how
Mhm.
subliminal the stuff is. And so, and then, getting to episode 8, 9, and 10 in season 2, from that journey, it just got more and more intense. And as we saw Trump get more and more belligerent, it became more and more real over those 2 years. We're like, oh my God, this show is so timely. It so needs to be seen right now. It so needs to be made right now. And by the time we got to episode 9, when I saw, I'm assuming everyone saw it here, so I don't know if I'm
Spoiler alert! Warning!
yeah,
Warning!
spoiler alert, right. Turn off your mics or your audio volume for a minute. When we saw Jason, I read the script and Jason gets lynched. I
Mm,
went, this is a moment in the American Hollywood history when we finally get to see Chinese being lynched, because this happened as many times as
yes.
Black people were lynched, and proportionally speaking, even more than Black people, because our numbers are so much smaller, but we got lynched way more than Black people. Like the biggest massacres are the ones in Los Angeles, and I think I forgot New
Wyoming or
Mexico,
my
yeah,
Wyoming.
Wyoming or something. Like there were huge massacres of Chinese miners. We don't know about that in history because Hollywood just doesn't want to tell that story.
Mm.
So by the time I went to the set to watch them shoot those scenes, even though I wasn't scheduled to shoot those days, because I knew it was a historical moment for me, and for Jacob, who the actor Kenneth, played by the beautiful Kenneth um, Folk, South African Chinese actor. It was amazing. I was just watching it. I was so moved. I was on the side. I just couldn't talk to people, just watching them film it, the extras screaming, hang him. It was so real, and even the extras were like, I can't believe we're doing this,
Yeah,
you
I read
know?
that they were actually, a little traumatized.
Yeah, everybody
One
was
girl, right,
traumatized.
and that group, the Irish group, who's lynching Jacob, and that I think in one of the talks after that episode, they had the talks with the actors, and they
Mhm.
felt like they were actually watching the real thing.
And as a Chinese American, feeling like I was experiencing what my great great grandfather and ancestors experienced, they were experiencing the opposite, the violence that was being perpetrated upon Asians.
Mhm.
So imagine them going, oh my God, I'm doing what my possible ancestors, lynching people, and this really happened. So it was quite a moving kind of set. Everybody's emotional, but there's a kind of family and camaraderie in Warrior that's very unique, that I haven't experienced in any other set. And I think it's because Bruce Lee set the tone. Under one sky, we are all one family. So if you're working on Warrior, somehow you're one family, and we all knew that. We all knew this was a special show. So even in the shooting a scene like the lynching at the end of 9, it was so powerful, but yet it was a moment where we all feel we're doing some good here for the world, for
I think
America especially.
it did what it did, because did make me really angry watching those scenes, even though I know it was historical fiction, knowing that my people, this happened to my people. It did make me really angry, and every time I see them getting just punched or killed, I'm just like flinching watching, that on my iPad. Um, but we talked, and the same thing, going through episodes 8, 9, and 10, and how that it's like, the heat, the moment that there's this moment where the tongs now have to really come together, you know, because now it's not the tongs against each other, it's the Chinese and the Irish, or I guess the white people, you know.
It's a moment like Black Lives Matter, where
Yeah,
people of different colors are coming together to fight the larger enemy. That's what that moment was about, and that's why it was so. That's why it resonates so powerfully right now. Because when you have hashtags and groups like Asians for Black Lives, marching with Black Lives Matter, and that was a moment where you had the tongues coming together to say this is a larger problem right now, that we have to put aside our personal differences to fight the bigger, the bigger evil that's oppressing all of us.
and
But I want to go back to what you're saying about the
go ahead.
punching and fighting and the way it
Yeah.
hurts. Is part of the beauty of Warrior is that it's entertainment. It's done in a way
I don't
that
know, it looked pretty real watching that. I'm like, oh my god, he just like ripped his guts out and hammering the the
that's
Chinese.
entertainment. Yeah,
Yeah,
some
but
people like that.
but how many people, who was watching, and you're going like, oh, oh, that's what I was doing. I'm like, oh, I can't watch it. I'm like screaming. I'm like, oh my god, and I did feel emotional, and I did feel angry. You know,
Yeah, and but I completely hear you. It does make people angry, and it's a call to arms. People want to like now speak out and actually support Warrior because of the racist portrayals
Mhm.
of the portrayal of racism. Sorry. So there's a huge following of fans who want to see more because we're addressing a root problem of society right now. But I think it's done through art. It's it's easier to ingest,
Mhm.
or to digest, because it's not just a lecture about white supremacy, violence, and racism. It's done through art, kung fu, some sexy people. um, so it's it's like it's a way I think that the genius of the showrunners is like we want to tell Bruce Lee's story in a way that is in the spirit of Bruce. If you look at Bruce Lee's movies, he was always fighting the oppressor for his community. He
Mhm,
never did it for himself.
mhm.
Like when in Return of the Dragon, he went to help his family in in Italy, in Rome, things like that. And the other one, I think it was Chinese Connection. He was helping a Chinese dojo against or the Chinese kung fu against the karate school that were bullying them, and then the larger European colonizers who had a sign up that says "No Chinese and dogs," allowed in this park. So he was always fighting the oppressor
Mhm.
for his community. So because of that, I think he was a hero. He became like a larger than life iconic, one of the most iconic human beings in the world because he represents a struggle for good for humanity.
Well, he's still a legend. I mean, unfortunately, he was gone too soon.
Way
And
too soon.
right, and
Yeah.
he was he was the connector between the Asians, Black, Latinos, whatever it was. Because martial arts was, even though it's more Asian, oriented, everybody felt that was like the universal language to connect everybody. You know.
Right. And, it really exploded. It took a couple of things, right? Like in the US at about that time, America was in in the 60s, early 70s, ready or amidst a cultural explosion. They were interested in Eastern philosophy, hippie, love, rock and roll was happening, things that were changing culture, fighting the Vietnam War. So now we have a hero that's not white. Bruce Lee showed up and said, "We can fight the establishment." And therefore he galvanized the black community because the black community needed a hero also, and they didn't have their own TV like they did now.
Mm.
So while the black community looked for another hero, there he was, Bruce Lee. And what did he do in his movies? He took down the oppressor. So, and in Enter the Dragon, Bruce Lee supported the black community. When that Jim Kelly black character went to say goodbye to his dojo before he went to the big fight in Asia, it was a dojo full of black people, African American dojo. That didn't exist right before that. So Bruce Lee said, "You guys can do this too." you know so Bruce Lee was a person who galvanized a community towards the greater good by empowering them into with a practice of like self-love, building your own physical and mental self-esteem.
It's just amazing that, like we said earlier, that this show resonates right now, even though this was shot in what, 2018. This is
It-
before the pandemic too, before the Asians started experiencing all the xenophobia. But it just goes to show that how this racism and all, um and this, xenophobia of, any other races still exists. And having Warrior right now kind of help tells the story. Maybe there's some healing, but I think there's also this a way of, educating some of these those who were never aware of the Chinese history, the early Chinese history in U.S., to kind of take a look back and say, well, who are we really? We are just like, anybody else. Our ancestors and their ancestors, unless you're Native American, we all came from somewhere else.
you don't
I'm
know
not
how many
so go
you
ahead.
don't know how yeah, sorry, I'm sorry to cut you off. Go ahead,
No,
go
go
ahead.
ahead. No, I was just gonna say that I'm just wondering what were the thoughts of some of the people, some comments that you've read from other fans that they say, oh, we never realized that the Chinese built the railroads, or like, they were fighting for jobs of the Irish, or what did you hear?
Well, one of the first things that a friend of mine who edited the recent PBS miniseries Asian
Oh,
Americans,
Chinese.
Li Shin, yeah, Li Shin edited that, and a co-director actually with I can't remember the director's name, Ken Burns' brother, Rick Burns. So Rick Burns and Li Shin uh, edited, directed Asian Americans, and she said when she saw the first episode of Warrior, she goes, she never in her life would thought a TV series would mention the Anti-Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882 three times in episode one. It's like that's a law that prevented Chinese from coming into the country for 60 years.
Mhm.
Nobody even knows that except unless you're Chinese, and
Right,
even a
right.
lot of Chinese don't know that.
Yeah,
But
right. Of course.
I know that because I never met my grandmothers because of that law, you know? The men were immigrating, going back to China to bring their son over to work, to go back to China to have a wife and family, then to come back, go back and bring their son over. Women were not allowed unless they were smuggled in or they were the wife of a businessman, and therefore there were so many brothels in Chinatown.
Mhm.
So none of this is pretty, but if you have any sort of inquiry or curiosity into your history, it's right there. You just have to look for it, and it's right in front of you. So Li Shin said she would never thought in a million years she would see a TV show that mentioned that law. And then a lot of other people would uh, basically come up to me or write me and say, I never knew that law existed. I thought the Muslim ban was the first law that prevented people of color from entering the country based on skin and ethnicity and culture, nationality. I said, no, the Chinese exclusion that prevented Chinese and Japanese,
Yeah, yeah.
from coming into the country for
Exactly. Yeah,
60 years.
yeah.
So things like that, which is, yeah, you know, they never knew the Chinese experienced the kind of racism we did. They think we're the model minority. Everything's nice for us. We're rich. We drive BMWs. I mean, that's just not true for most Asians, Asians in
No,
America.
not. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So this show is the gritty truth, goes to the gritty truth, but in a way that's entertainment.
Well, I like
And
the fact that the show is not just for the non-Asians. Like it spoke to me. Like I heard Toysan, a songs from
mm,
Toysan. I'm like, oh my God,
yeah,
Toysan. I'm from Toysan. My descendants from Toysan. I'm Toysan. I speak Toysan. So I was
right.
like so proud. I was like, oh my God, we have Toysan representation in a major, TV series. And just hearing the background actors doing the Cantonese or the Toysan, and you just kind of like, you know, kind of, oh wow, I heard that. It's like when one time I went to I was in London one time. I went to London and I was just resting at a Burger King in London with my daughter in the stroller. And then I was like, Toysan, I heard Toysan. You just kind of, just turn around. Like you recognize something. And that's what happened to me watching Warrior. It wasn't the
Mhm,
language, it was like the food. It had the drunken chicken, right? In the season one, they
mm,
ate the drunken chicken. Like,
right, right.
and the, just the chopsticks and things is like, and the red envelope. It's just like, I could connect that. And I think that's the way you could get to the viewers. We don't always want to, I think these days when we talk about diversity, we don't want programming that's gonna aim for one specific audience, right? But you do want to reach out and have those ethnic little touches in there because there's that audience out there that they may be missing. And I personally connected it when I heard like, oh, Toysan, the background murmuring. I was like, oh, that's just like when I'm sitting in Hop Shing on Bowery Street getting my dim sum with the grannies and grandpas. I'm hearing Toysan all around me. You know,
It's pretty amazing. I mean, what I said earlier, that the show is entertaining on many levels,
yeah.
and so that you can look at it. That's why actually people on a Facebook Warrior. There's a Warrior Facebook group. There's actually two, I think. What the larger Warrior Facebook group is have people rewatching 4 or 5 times the two seasons because
Wow.
they just see so many more things as they rewatch,
Right.
and
Right.
they're like saying there's nothing better on TV right now, so they're just rewatching,
Mhm.
and as they rewatch they say, oh, I didn't notice this when they did this. So like people are rewatching because of all those little details.
Mhm.
But in terms of Toysan, when we were shooting, we had hundreds of Chinese extras in South Africa, in Cape Town. I thought, where did they come from,
Yeah. This
sitting
Asian
behind me.
people, Chinese people in South Africa.
Yeah, so sitting behind me, I heard Toy-san from the extras, and I was like, "What are you doing here?" And he goes, "Well, my great 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 grandfather got off the boat, when they came and to dig the diamond mines and build the railroads in South Africa. So it's the same boats that went from Toy-san to America and Cuba that went to South Africa and left these communities, these Chinatown communities. And so I did a little documentary, maybe some of you know that, of just, some of the South African background that I met, and just to say, who are you and what are you doing here? As part of our diaspora of
Mhm.
how the Chinese spread. And so I was fascinated with them. And they not only spoke to San, but other local dialects from, the south of Guangdong.
Oh wow, wow.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's
So
really
they're like
amazing.
probably fifth generation or something there,
Some of them was as early as the 1600s.
oh wow.
Yeah. The
So
different slave, yeah, because the slave trade is what established Cape Town,
right, right.
South Africa. So those boats
Uh-huh.
that operated the slave trades were bringing laborers from China to South Africa even earlier than to America and Cuba.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm gonna like let the audience ask some questions now. So
Oh, do you have a hand raising thing? That's
I
sometimes.
have a hand raising thing. I have to be honest.
I think if there's a reaction button on the bottom right, if people want
Reaction.
to ask.
Yeah, and if you can't,
Oh, there's some hand raised. Yes, I see some hands. You
yeah.
can call them out.
Let me see. Where's the hands? Let me move this out.
There's a yellow hand. I see the yellow hands.
How come I don't see the yellow hand? I
Oh,
see
you
one of the
don't?
comments. No. If you see it, why don't you answer?
Oh,
Are
wait,
you
wait. Okay. Do you want me to call?
yeah,
Okay. I
please
see
go
one
ahead.
that's Larry Suhu.
Yeah. The question. Larry, you have a question?
Yes. Hey, Shirley. Thanks for arranging this. Very love the show. I just finished watching season 2 this week, and I'm having withdrawals right now from not being able to see season 3.
You
So
can do that.
I know you talked a bit about the reaction when Jacob got lynched. And that was the turning point for me when I saw that. And I was saying, please don't hang Jacob. Please don't hang Jacob. He's innocent in all this. And that's what caused the rage, I think, for many of the viewers here. When you saw Jacob being caged like an animal in the back of that wagon, and you saw the mobs coming in, attacking. I was just thinking, what are they going to do? He's a dead man. And sure enough, um, the rage that went through was just thinking about my ancestors' experiences having the queue getting yanked on in San Francisco. My great grandfather worked on the railroad as well, and it just sunk my heart in. How did the actors feel when they interacted with the Chinese actors with the non-Chinese actors? Because I'll tell you that Dylan Leary, he's a mean guy. Right? And I saw, I think it was whether it was on your Facebook page or someone else's Facebook page, where he said bye bye with a bunch of the other actors. And it's hard to distance yourself from something like that. What kind of emotions? I mean, how did it play out with your fellow actors?
That's a really good question, Larry. And earlier I said that the warrior family, like we created an energy that was sort of like really familial, and so we knew that we were shooting this horrific scene, but we were also bonded for 2 years. So it's the same group of the crew, the filmmakers of the Cape Town Film Studios were mostly African filmmakers, Black, um, on crew, holding the lights, the microphones, changing the cameras. They're all Black. And it was because HBO had a deal with South Africa that, if you shoot here, you get a tax break, but you have to train our people, which was great. We're training them to be good, better filmmakers, and they're great. They're beautiful filmmakers. So we've known them for 2 years, and even they were moved. Even they were like, "Oh my God," Um, but we're all family. It's all good. After shoot, you high five each other. Even the white actors and Jacob, they would help him up, right? The white actors who were knocked them down would help him up. So you don't see that. You only see the final product. But if you have outtakes, just they're helping Jacob, with the dust off his clothes. And but like I said earlier, even the white actors were moved because they were horrified that they were screaming, lynch him, and they don't want to do that in reality, but they have to act that. And so for some actors who are like committed to the characters they do, it's painful. Um, and so we do the research, and then after the acting, you kind of have to have your own practice to let go of that energy, because it's disturbing. You can go have nightmares. And Jacob, after he shot that scene, I saw him in the trailer, because our trailers are over 200 meters away. And I wanted to go by and say great job, but I saw him having his process of letting that go, and I was like, this is very private now. Like he doesn't need me coming in and saying, "Great job, man, dude. You know that was amazing." You know, he just had to like I let that stuff go. You know, and you could see this dedication of his life. This actor is a beautiful moment. You know, and I wish I had a camera right after shooting the scene of being lynched. He's letting all that stuff go, and then the next day I see him and he's normal again. You know, he's this nice Kenneth Folk energy. You know, but like at that moment, you're like he's processing this thing that is really emotional and deep, so let him have those moments that are healing, his process.
So
um
I have a follow-up question to that. Sorry.
no, right away.
I admire that because you're all professional actors, that you can do that. But I imagine that you need to have total immersion to get into that role to feel that way. Another
Correct.
disturbing point about the show for me was the use of the C word, which I hate ever since I was a little kid. And anybody that used it, it really burned me up.
Mm.
That must have caused some feelings for people as well.
Yeah, it did. And even the extras who were not, professionals, right? The extras who came because they saw a call in the newspaper or they were students at school that would want to make extras. When they heard that stuff, they were like, what the, F, we should, but then they got used to it. They went, oh, it's a period piece to show the racism in America, you know, because, if you look at, if you truly want to like tell it how it is, you don't want to water it down. You hear the N word a lot coming from racists in, like Lovecraft Country or Watchmen or I Might Destroy You, these black centered voice shows now on HBO. We have to understand that's how it was in order to deal with it. If we don't know what it is, we don't know how to deal with it. But we as the professionals understand that this is what the director, the writers, Bruce Lee wanted to show how extreme racism can be. So this is what we're up against.
Well, thank you. That clarifies a lot. And to offset this, I watched Bling Empire to neutralize.
Did you watch my interview with Kevin, Larry?
I saw the picture, but I didn't get to see it yet.
Okay. All right. I think Ming, you have a question, Ming?
Hey, yes, I do. Hello. This is actually a question from my friend Kenny, who could not make this call. So there's actually a book about Tong Wars in Chinatown,
Yes.
in New York Chinatown, and the Tong leader, his name is called Businessman Tom Lee, and he actually, this is his face. So it kind of looks like your character in The Warrior. So is your character based on this guy?
I want to say my character could have been based on that guy. That guy, the director, showrunners didn't say to me that it was based on that guy. There's also another Tong leader. Maybe if Vic Huey was here, he would know his name.
He signed up. He didn't come on.
Duck or something. Somebody Duck, who was his archenemy, Tom Lee's archenemy in Chinatown. The other Tong. But I was in a another period production called The Nick, which was based on Tom Lee. So I played a character based on Tom Lee. But yeah, so I did research for these characters before, for The Nick that helped for this show to show how badass these Tong leaders were, But and at the same time, on that opposite side, they were also doing it for the better of the community, to prevent, racist attacks in the community.
James has a question.
Yeah. Okay. A follow-up question with that is that yeah, like you guys were saying, episodes 8, 9, and 10 were like really emotional episodes. I thought my best episodes were 9 and 10. When Assam went into the Irish bar and he's like, has a fight, told him, if you guys better stay out of Chinatown, if not, I'm gonna bring an army next time. And it kind of ended season 2 like up here. And then I was disappointed when there is no season 3. And I read somewhere that there's actually a lot of script left, and just want to know if there's anything going on in fruition for season 3.
Yes, if you want to support a new season, I would recommend going to the Facebook Warrior group that's a larger one, and they have a petition up that you can find very easily. And there's also a lot of recommendations on how to get the attention of the producers of the higher ups, the suits at HBO and Time Warner, Warner Media, who owns now Cinemax and the show. Like they're sitting on it because of a merger, and through this merger they decided to stop production on original programming from Cinemax. There was a season 3 planned. There was a writer's room retreat planned. They had ideas for all these characters and where they were going to go. All of this was in the works. And then the merger happened, and then they completely severed that line. So I would say you can go to the Facebook Warrior group. There's a change.org petition that people are signing. And then there's also like a letter sample on how to write to Jason Kilar through his Twitter or HBO account to show how important Warrior is, not just to Chinese Americans or Asian Americans or people of color, but to the understanding of racism in America. To say that if you're promoting Black Lives Matter now by having shows like The Watchmen, I May Destroy You, Lovecraft Country, and more, you can continue that by supporting Warrior, and that would be better for America.
Okay, we have a question from
Thank
James.
you.
Question from James.
Hi, Perry. So Father John is so badass and like high strung. How do you get in character, and like what was your favorite scene?
Wow. There's a lot of favorite scenes because I love the writers. The writers really, it's a gift to the actors when the writers know how to write to make the characters human, multidimensional. So they give you room to explore and go, oh, I could do this, I could do this. It's bad when it's a Hollywood thing that's flat and you're only serving the purpose of the larger character. So the writers gave me room to go, oh, Father June can be like this. Oh, Father June can do this, which is pure joy for an actor, because it's like a cook that can have all these spices.
Good
So
analogy, yeah.
yeah, so it's amazing. I really give all the props to the writers and to the vision of Bruce Lee and Shannon Lee. But Father June was inspired by Tom Lee, the former Chinatown head of one of the most powerful tongs in New York City, and also Malcolm X, because both of them fought for the people. Malcolm X was all about, they haven't given us what we wanted so far. And they're still killing us. So what are we going to do about this? And Father June had a speech. One of my monologues actually for audition was about, we're the most powerful tong in Chinatown to prevent the violence of the ducks. So that's why I do what I do. So I gear myself up by thinking about the struggles of our ancestors, all the suffering that our ancestors gone through, and how we're not seen until now. And so how can Father June allow our struggles to be seen? And so I kind of bring that in, but in a way that allows the audience to go, I hear what he's saying. It's not just, anger. It's also like, there's a reason for this anger. And the reason is underneath this, I want to, Bruce Lee said it best. He does what he does to show the beauty of the Chinese culture. So if I can show the beauty of the Chinese culture somehow with this project through that monologue, then I've done my job, and the producers have allowed me to do that. So I would say that Father June, just to answer your question, I look at my history, my ancestors, the racism in America, the things that inspires me to do what I do for like Bruce Lee, for my ancestors, so that they can finally be seen.
But before we go on,
Nicely put.
are we able to go over time a little bit with you, Perry, or no?
Oh yes, we can go over time.
We could go like till 8:45 or maybe close to 9. We'll see. If you have to go, we'll go. But we won't go later than 9, because I know a lot of people have questions for you. So the next person who has a question is Norm.
Hey, Shirley. Hey, Perry. How are you guys doing?
Good, thank you. How you doing, Norm?
Doing well. I love the show. One of the things that really that really stood out to me in the show was when Chow had a conversation with Assam, and he was saying like, I know, you can drop this whole coolie act, right? And he was saying that, you know, and when he had that conversation, he was also saying that, you know, that he was a slave himself, and it took him 12 years to, you know, to leave and become his own person. And I feel like in some ways right now, a lot of times Asians or Asian Americans, they're conditioned in a certain way, right, to keep quiet. And I feel like there are people, you know, out there that are like Assam, right? Are like Chow, that you know, they're waiting for those moments where they're voicing their, you know, the injustices that are happening right now, and it's happening. You see it with Daniel Day Kim. He's voicing his opinions. I just want to get your thoughts on, were there any conversations that you had with the rest of the cast members, like Jason, or Assam's the actor for Assam? Were there any conversations, you know, that you guys had about the importance of having these kind of leadership roles where, you know, they have to really take up the mantle to kind of inspire others?
Yeah, you know, that's a very personal uh, aspiration, right? Like your own activism and how you represent your culture. And that's a very personal thing. And a lot of people don't want that weight, you know,
Yeah.
because it's a weight, right? Like Cha was saying, you could drop it because it's heavy, dude. You're carrying all the, you know, like you should just be yourself, you know. And Chow has a lot of weight on him, right? That he's still trying to release, you know. So the beauty about the show is that the writing is really good and the understanding of these characters by the writers are really good, you know, because they resonate deeply with in a way that's major human experiences. We all have expectations and we might not be able to meet them up to our own standards or from other people. So, in my view, because I've been an actor for, I've been a professional actor since 1991 when I did my first show with Corky Lee. Corky Lee wrote it, and from that, it was very important to represent your people, right? Corky Lee's maybe many of you know Corky Lee, but he was an Asian American activist.
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Yeah. So his work is about his people. So
Mhm.
not only can his physical body and face represent, his art should represent, right? So it's his whole being, and that's the beautiful thing about Corky is it's his whole being. He just represents the Asian American struggle and how we can be better. And so but that's not a thing that that's not a mantle that a lot of people can handle. So Corky, Fred Ho, was another one of my mentors, and I thought they are doing it. These are people who are, they're before I was an actor. So Fred Ho was a musician and Corky, and then I became an actor. And I went as an actor, you kind of have to represent, otherwise what good are you really doing? What story are you really telling, especially in the context of this Hollywood white supremacist framework? The art that we do is in the framework of white supremacy in Hollywood. So how can we break out of that? If I don't represent, I'm in collusion with white supremacy. So I need to speak out verbally and articulate clearly that my work should question all the systems at work in place in America that oppresses people, and we should break out of them. We should be conscious of what those systems are, the boundaries that we bump against every day. And I bump against them when I have auditions. I bump against them when the auditions aren't, these characters are written poorly to make white people laugh at Asians. I would refuse the audition, or I would talk to my manager and say, if they would change that line, I would go to the audition. And these are opportunities that have resulted in positive action from these people where they said, oh yeah, we didn't see that. Yeah, we'll change that line, and let us know what
Written
else you
by
think.
Asians. It wasn't written by Asians.
Exactly. They're not, that's what I mean about the framework of white supremacy. We are telling their story, except for some special shows like Aquafina of Queens and, maybe and Warrior especially. These are shows that center on Asian voices. So we need to support those shows. Otherwise, it's going to go back to all we have to do is look at the African American community. They made their own entertainment. They were like, screw this. Hollywood is not giving us crap.
They make their own channel and
Yeah,
their own studio.
exactly. So
Yeah.
I think if you're an actor, you have to be you have to address what you're representing. And if you're not, then you're in denial.
Yeah. I mean, were these conversations had between you and the other cast members?
Yes, yes, very informally because we hung out a lot, in between shooting, and we went to dinner a lot, and just weekends we would somehow see each other around the same haunts, around Cape Town, and a lot of it was like, that scene you were shooting, wow, blah blah. We would comment on it and how we feel and what it means, and we help each other a lot.
Mhm.
And for my son Young Jun and I, played by the amazing Jason Tobin, we had a lot of bonding time,
Mm.
and we talked about what it meant to show a Chinese father and son on TV,
Interesting. Yeah.
the importance of that, like how often do you see a Chinese father and son on American television?
Mainstream television. Yeah. Never.
Yeah,
Or
the father
very-
and son relationship.
Mhm.
There's no story with a father and son relationship other than Fresh Off the Boat, which is something else altogether, a different animal. So, but to have a drama with a Chinese father and son, there was a responsibility placed on us to play it in a certain way, and so we thought about that a lot. We hung out a lot. We played guitar together. We went out to each play
Oh, cool.
others, and we just hung out. You know, did other stuff. But we talked about the scenes, and we thought like, wow, we can really get into some stuff, like this father and son. And then one of the most amazing compliments I got recently was from a friend in New York who said, actually two people said it separately to me. It's like, when I watched your father and son scene and you were telling Young Jun to do this and behavior, I thought my father was talking to me.
Mm.
And I thought, wow, we achieved that. We achieved it. I made you seen.
Mm.
We're seen, right? That's
Right.
what we need. We need to be seen. So I hope I answered your question, Norm.
No, yeah, you did. You did. Also, just no, I noticed as well that Young Jun, he is Asian American, the
Well,
only Asian American.
Well, he lived in America, and you would say
I
he's
thought he
Asian.
was born. I thought he was born there.
He was born in the UK.
Oh no, the character Young Jun.
Oh yeah. I'm sorry. The character Young Jun is ABC. Yeah, Jok Sing, born in
He is
America.
the only ABC.
Yeah.
There was the episode where he said like, I don't fit in both worlds because I never visited the mainland, and and people here in America look at me like I don't belong here.
I'm a Chinaman that's never been to China.
Yeah.
That's episode 5 of season 1, which is one of my favorite episodes.
One of my favorite episodes too. Yeah.
Yeah.
The Western episode.
Exactly. And every line says it all, right? The mentality of Asian Americans and how we're seen. It's written by Kenneth Lin. So that's an amazing episode because it was written by an Asian American, led by Asian American actors, and directed by an Asian American.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
No wonder it resonated with me so much, because even that scene.
Norman, last question for you, Norman. Harrison's waiting.
I was like hoping, how come Shirley hasn't like cut me off yet?
Yeah. I'm like, okay, this is okay. Are you done? Are you done?
I'm done.
Okay, you're done. All right, Harrison.
You're awesome.
Question. Harrison's question.
So no, oh my God, Norm kind of beat me to the punch out of all of those. So I gotta congratulate it to Norm for beating me to the punch. But thank you, Shirley, for cutting him off. Perry, wow, like I can't believe I'm actually talking to you. Like my hands are like literally shaking. Great flute player, by the way.
Thank you.
And everything.
Flute, yeah.
I don't know. I mean, like I felt like Norm kind of like made most of the questions that he already asked, but like the things that we're like going through right now as Asian Americans, like at this moment, like elderlies being pushed on the street. I mean, I don't know what kind of questions to ask about for that, but like I feel like it's like whether it's the right time to talk about it, like with an actor like you. I mean, do you see yourself as like an activist? Like
Yes, yes. If that's your question, I do see myself as an activist. That connects with Norm's question. Is like I don't put it upon other people because it's heavy. It's Angela Davis said it best. If you choose to be in activism, it's your life's work. You know, you can't just touch upon it and say I do it off and on. If you're an activist, it's your life's work. And but I do it in I don't know if you've heard of Grace Lee Boggs, one of the first Chinese American activists in the US. She's a beautiful woman, writer, activist who went and saw that, you know, the black people are the ones that are suffering the most in America. And so if there's, you know, and Yuriko Chiyama, another Asian American woman, Japanese American who lived in the who was she may have been born in the concentration camps, American concentration camps. She also said it best when she says, if there's one person struggling in America, everybody's struggling. And so right now, Black people need our help. So I understand that, and it's my voice to say that, you know, there's a lot of racism and there's a lot of violence that's always being perpetrated and enacted in America, and we need to look at the root of that. You know, we can't. There is blame. There is blame, but we want to make sure we blame the right people, right? So it takes a lot of education and constant education and revising how you think and see the situation because it changes, right? Racism isn't the same ever. It's not the same now as it was in the, you know, when slavery was around, or then when slavery was abolished and Jim Crow was around, and then the Civil Rights March, um, you know, and then the 80s, you know, and now, you know, there's all these different phases of racism in America that we have to address as it's happening, and we have to always be ready for the change and go with the change. Constant education, constant awareness of what's happening with other people of culture, other you know, muted voices, other oppressed people in America. We have to always look at them and remind ourselves that that's that's a really important place to look at and add that to what I'm doing. So it's a never-ending job, you know. And I take it upon myself because I was trained to be an artist in school, and when a great teacher of mine said, you know, you have to do the art that's important, otherwise you can't be an artist. And then for everyone, it's like, what is important to you? You know, and that's a different question for everyone, right? So I never put being an activist on someone else. I just focus on my own work and know that being an activist is important, but I also do it with what I love, which is art, because I have to live with it. I have to live with myself, you know. I don't
Right.
want to live with hate, you know, because if you know, you can be an activist full of hate, but it's whatever drives you, you know. And Grace Lee Boggs once said, "Make it fun. Make it fun."
All right.
Good.
I also have one more question.
Okay.
So like for me, I'm a college student, young Asian American, trying to major into the film business. Um, what do I do? I mean, like as a young filmmaker like myself.
You have to find your seed of inspiration that will grow, that you can water, you know, and that seed will sprout a tree that is solid, right? Make sure you find the right seed. So when that tree sprouts a solid trunk, it's going to produce branches that are with the solid tree. So whatever branch you go off on, it's all part of that tree that came from that seed. The magic and the difficult part is finding your seed, and that's different for everyone. So for me, I looked at my uh, experience as a Chinese American, my ancestry. What am I doing in this country? You know, why did my parents sacrifice their lives, buy a Chinese restaurant in the middle of nowhere, work their bones off, die young to leave me as an artist? What am I doing here? You know, that's my seed. So whatever I choose, that whatever branches off, it's going to be reflected upon the seed that I continuously water. So find your seed.
All right. Thank you so much, Perry. Thank you, Shirley.
You're welcome. We have a question from Brian.
Hello, can you hear me? All right.
Yep.
Hey, how's it going, Perry?
Good. Thanks.
So first off, awesome show. My wife and I, she's right here, Michelle. We're on round 3, watching it again.
Yay, that's what I mean. You know, people are totally rewatching it. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're kind of curious. You, like, you know, at the end of season 2, spoiler alert, like, you know, you left, right? So like we were thinking like, okay, if they bring you back, not like in a flashback, like how would you want to be brought back into the story, or like, you know, like what would you want to see happen?
That's a great question. Thanks, Brian. So I want to say again that there was a season 3 planned. There was the writers were getting in the room, you know, until it got, you know, cut off. I had talked to one of the writers about where Father June would go, you know, and I think that he would have an adventure. I mean, I had a lot. It was such, you know, I love the producers because they're open to all kind of ideas, and when you let out the open the when you let open the floodgates of creativity, it just keeps coming. So one of my ideas was Father June gets on a train, right? The train's just started, and then he goes and then he encounters America. You know, it's kind of like what happened to David Carradine, you know, except, you know, like it really happens to Father June, you know, and he can come across these miners, which I mentioned earlier, who were massacred, but maybe he helped them prevent massacres. Maybe he showed them how to use um, because I'm sticking with the genre of action, you know, and kung fu, that he shows them how to use their mining tools to defend themselves. You know, like the Hop Way. You know, he brought out his original training skills. Like, oh, I'm not useful in Chinatown anymore, but I could be useful in this mining camp, Chinese workers to protect themselves. You know, another fantasy was he ends up in Chicago and he gets kidnapped by a rival Tong who hears that Father June was no longer in the Tong. And so he gets kidnapped. So the Hot Way has to come and rescue him, you know? So, I
Wow.
mean, and then our friend Vic Huey had a plan where I get to New York City and, you know, I encounter the New York City, you know,
Wait,
Tongs
speaking
and
of Vic, he's coming into the room right now.
so there's
Right now.
you know, these producers are just wonderful with because they're creative beings, you know. Once you, like, you know, we're talking about a seed, once you water it, it can go anywhere with the right tree propping. So yeah, it's not the end of Father June. He just opened up America, put it that way.
Sounds like a pretty sweet spin-off.
Yeah, yeah.
Nice.
We have a
Cool.
question from
Thanks.
David.
Thanks, Brian.
Hi,
Hi,
David.
how you doing?
Hey, David.
Hey, Perry, I just wanted to I just wanted to say thank you so much, you know, for working on this project. I worked in film and TV production from like 2002 to 2010, and I worked on like over 100 projects. And this is what when you said you were when you heard about this casting call and you were like, I gotta get on that show. Like for me, it was the same thing. When I heard about this show, I was like, I have to get on. I mean, obviously I didn't, and I was out of the film business by then, but I was so excited and I am so grateful. I'm so grateful that this show is happening and it's talking about this time period. I'm sorry, Chinese Exclusion Act, you know, and the work that we did on the railroads and everything. You know, it's so important, you know, to our history. But really my question is, what do you have coming up, like, you know, down the line? What are you working on now? What's your next project?
Yeah, so we were gonna go into that. We were gonna go talk.
Oh, sorry.
We were gonna talk about Boogie, which is a movie that he's coming up in too. So if you want, you could talk about that as well, Perry.
Yeah. Why don't we talk about that now since David
Yeah,
brought
absolutely.
it up?
You play a father again.
Well, yeah. So, you know, the funny thing is I took a break when in the 2000, I took a break from acting because I had kids, you know, and once you have kids, you just can't focus on things. And, you know, my partner, we were both artists. We didn't have insurance and all this stuff, you know, so it was a very tricky time. So, but I was lucky that I found the flute and that I loved the Japanese flute and it became a business, which was a godsend because I could stay at home, be the stay-at-home dad and work on flutes. And then my partner went and got a MFA to eventually teach and you know, get us insurance and all that stuff.
Perry,
But
maybe you should explain the flute. Maybe some people don't know, you know, that you're a flute maker.
let me get back to that. But to answer David's question, I became a father. So somehow, you know, when the kids were old enough, I decided, okay, I'm now really bored. I need to get back on stage, you know, and I thought, but I can't go on stage because theater doesn't pay enough for me to be away from home. So I looked to film and TV, which I didn't have a career in because in the 90s, anything for Asian Americans was horrible. That's how much it's changed, right? Any Asian American character on TV or film was horrible, and I wouldn't go on those auditions. So as I became a father, I saw Justin Lin emerge from Better Luck Tomorrow, Lost, right? These shows, cable TV came about, Netflix, original content started. We started seeing more Asian Americans. I went, oh, I should try TV and film. At least if I get a gig, it can pay, you know. So I went to audition, and suddenly, I got, yeah. And then what seemed to fit me were father roles, and it's because I became a father. I understood those roles, and so which leads to Boogie. So that's a film with Eddie Huang from Fresh Off the Boat, Huang's World. Eddie's great. He's got his own vision of Asian American culture, and not his own, but he represents an aspect of Asian American culture that is not recognized in the mainstream, and that's a very kind of street hip hop, Black culture that a lot of young Asian Americans have adopted, as opposed to a mainstream white culture. So that's really important that he brings that out in the story of Boogie, based on a Chinese basketball phenom, and who falls in love with a African American girl, Black girl in Harlem, and they have a relationship, and based on seeing two cultures meet and his coming of age, and we learn about his history and pressures of being in a Chinese family. But it's not your typical Chinese family either that Hollywood wants you to see. It's Eddie Huang's version of the Chinese family, which is dysfunctional. So it's great that we see that. And so I'm very excited about that film. And that's the next thing that's coming out. I think it's going to be in the theaters, AMC, March 5th. Yeah.
Are we able to go into the theaters yet? I have
Yeah, it's starting. Yeah, people are going back to the theaters. So, but so anyway, just to answer the flute, I through a theatrical show in New York City, I heard the shakuhachi, Japanese Zen flute. I was mesmerized by it. I had to learn how to play it. And then it detracted me from theater and my other art, because I ended up going to Japan to study with a master.
Wow.
And learn how to play and make. And then I came back and had children. And so everything, my whole life got detracted in all kinds of ways, but I think going back to I think was it Harrison's question is if my seed was planted in the right place, it's all going to be part of my identity of Asian American arts.
Brian,
Thank
do you
you.
have another question? Oh, sorry. David, you have another question or no?
No, just saying thanks. Thank you so much.
Oh, thanks,
Brian, you
David.
have a question again, Brian? Or your hand is still up, Brian? No?
Oh, is there anyone else out there? There's somebody
There's
new.
a lot of people. I'm just saying some have hands up and some don't. Anyone else have a question?
Eli, I see Eli.
Hi, Perry. I really, really enjoyed the series. I'm every time I watched an episode, I would say, "Oh my gosh, this is probably the best series I've watched on cable, on Netflix, Amazon, HBO, whatever." I was like, "Oh my gosh, oh my gosh." And I'm not one of the younger Asian Americans. I'm a Gen X, and I've seen very few Asian Americans in film over the years. And so I wonder, what can we do in the future to get more Asian Americans in better roles? Is it the decision-making positions? Is it getting more into the acting? Is it more money? What is the biggest factor that we need to address right now?
Well, we can learn from the African American community, the Black community from the 60s and 70s that produced their own, Hollywood, Black Hollywood machine that produces great filmmakers today. So it doesn't happen overnight. It takes a while. We need to support Asian American film festivals, because those are the directors and writers and producers that are telling Asian-centered voices. So if you really want to make a difference, spend your money on an Asian American film festival. Support Minari right now. Support our storytellers, our myth makers, because Hollywood celluloid is a huge influential machine, right? This glowing light of image that we sit in front of a room does a lot to our consciousness, and subconsciousness. So if we can produce, the Asian American stories we want to see, that can affect, us, in immeasurable ways. And Asian American film festivals become a producer. It's not that difficult to become a film producer. at a small level. You know, you just organize people that want to make a film. You know, a writer, you know, a cameraman, you know, a few people who can hold lights and a microphone, you know, an editor and a musician. You know, that's 6 people. You know, you can put together quite a nice film with only volunteer, you know. And if that's how you get started, you learn the business, you start to apply for funding, you start to hire actors, you start to hire the cameraman, you know. And pretty soon you want people investing in you. I don't know if you know the story of Robert Rodriguez, who made those Spy Kids movies. You
Yeah.
know, he made his first movie in grad school for $2,000. You know, he went to Mexico because he goes, I can make a better movie in Mexico with $2,000 than I could in the US. So that got his career started, because there was no other way for him to make a movie, you know, as a Mexican American filmmaker. So, you know, the world has changed dramatically since then, because the cameras have gotten so much better and into the hands of anybody with an iPhone, you know, can make a movie. So Steven Soderbergh makes movies with iPhones. There are other films that won Sundance festivals with iPhones. So you know, it's not difficult to start, but just have to start, you know,
Right,
find the right.
with the change of theater, where theaters are no longer in operation, is it might be even better to go towards YouTube and shared media as opposed to the mainstream. Because I have some friends who went to UCLA, USC Film School. They come out in debt, first of all, and then secondly, it's so expensive to get that professional level equipment and talent, etc. What you were saying earlier, where people are using their iPhones, it might be more effective. But like, to really change the public view of Asian Americans, do you think it's going to be more in independent media as opposed to mainstream?
Well, yes. I mean, independent media, streaming, cable TV is what opened up our stories, right? Before, network TV was never going to be able to tell Asian American stories. I mean, you know, the first one was All American Family with Margaret Cho,
Yeah.
um,
In the
and didn't go the way she wanted it to go. And then Fresh Off the Boat, which didn't go the way Eddie Huang wanted it to go. So you're never going to get control unless you are the producer. And I don't think it's a matter of numbers. Like, it doesn't have to be a network show to make a difference. It can be a small YouTube web series that can make a difference, as long as people see it and it makes a difference. You know,
We have a question from your pal Vic.
Vic, what's going on?
Hey Perry, how's it going? You know,
Good, brother.
I think a lot of the people who are here have not worked in the industry. I've been in the industry for 43 years, in the unions, working on major feature films and TV shows. And when I tried to get into the unions, they said, "Oh, you ain't got a Chinaman's chance." But I was the first Chinese person in Local 52 because I persisted. I wanted to be in the unions. And right now in New York, there are 65 scripted TV series shooting. This is the best time for young people to get into the unions, learn how TV shows are made. It's a craft. You just don't, people think, oh, TV show. But when you really do the work, you're working 80 hours a week. You're cranking out shows 7 days every episode. When you do episodic TV, 10 episodes, that's 10 months of your life. How many people here even understand what the entertainment business is? It's a business. And there's a whole hierarchy of how to, get a union job, get your feet wet, make some money, learn how it's done, then you go off. A lot of kids have no clue how this business works, how the demands of the craft, demands of all the skill levels that whatever, from set dressing to prop making to acting, everything, everybody involved in the industry, it's immersive. And the biggest problem is that a lot of people just don't have the fortitude to go through the hoops that you have to go to. It takes about 2 years. If you decide you want to be in the industry right now in New York City, you can get a union card if you put your mind to it. You could become a trainee. One of the things that we're going to do, we're forming an organization called Coma, is to put pressure on the major Hollywood producers and TV executives to have trainees, to have, you know, workshops so that, you know, people of color, especially our people, the name of our organization is called Chinatown Organization for Media Awakening. We're waking from our coma. We will not allow people to tell our stories anymore. You go to the writer's room, there's 65 TV series shooting in New York, and every single show has one episode in Chinatown. And you know what usually the subject is? Prostitution, gangs, stealing our jobs, spreading COVID. The next 10 shows, I bet, in Chinatown will be COVID-related shows that some Chinese person is spreading it all over the place. And this has to change. And the only way it's going to change, people have to get into the creative arts, you know, and they have to have the presence and the willpower to stay there and keep on cracking that wall. Because everybody who's in this business put themselves there. It's not an accident. And all the people who are like saying, oh, it's too difficult, oh, we can't do it. That's not true, because we are at the tipping point now. We are actually at a point where if we have our young writers, our biggest problem, really, I gotta tell you the truth, is the people who are getting into the arts don't have life experience. They've never lived. So when they're trying to write something that they know nothing about.
Okay. Well, we have a few more minutes before 9. So Perry, you have something to say to Vic or something you want to share?
Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Thank you, Vic. Thank you for sharing your 43 years of expertise and what it means to be dedicated to a craft. And like I said earlier about being an activist is a lifetime you know, pursuit. And I think Victor just touched upon that. It's like you have to stick with this thing because it's not easy, right? I mean, and it's, you know, you have ebb and flows. You need to re-energize. You need to find inspiration. You know, you need to find joy in the work you do. And I think for Vic, you know, he has, you know, and I'm not speaking for Vic, but I think Vic has a joy in terms of like his vision for Chinese Americans and how we can tell our stories. And it is not easy, but I would differ from Vic in saying that don't be daunted by the hard work. You can also rediscover the wheel in a different way. You know, you don't have to do it the way that the union tells you to do. No offense, Vic, but do it the way that you just want to do it. You know, otherwise
I'm just saying, you got to survive, right? A lot of people say, well, how do I survive when I make these little films and I'm not getting paid? One way is to learn the craft, get a little money, then you can fund your own little project, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, union pay is good. You make decent money.
Absolutely. I mean, that is absolutely a good way to do it. What I'm offering is, you know, you can have a day job that pays pretty good, and on the weekends, make a film the way you want to make it without anyone else's input, you know? So just do what your heart tells you, you know, like I always leave with my favorite quote from Bruce Lee is like, you know, it goes back to the inspiration of what you need to do is like he does what he does to share the beauty of the Chinese culture. So that inspires me. That's always what I base my decisions on. If I'm going to take this job, how am I going to say that line in the scene? Am I showing the beauty of Chinese culture, or am I just, you know, what am I doing here? So I need a barometer. So I think you all can find your own barometers of what can help you, inspire you, and get you through the difficulty of making good art, you know, to your standards or the standards above what you think is good art. And at the end of the day, hopefully it's helpful to society.
Okay, well, on one other final note, we want to talk a little bit, maybe for 2-3 minutes about father-son father son.
Yes, another film
Yeah.
which I play a father.
Again.
You know, it's the last year, 2 years, I had a joy, the luxury of playing a father to Jason Tobin, a father to Ronnie Chin, and a father to Taylor Takahashi, and all three beautiful human beings, Asian men, you know, doing their thing. They're all inspiring young Asian men doing their thing. And so I think that Patrick Chin, the director, Father Son, based on the novels by Henry Chang, his novels on Detective Yu, filmed a noir detective series on Chinatown in the 90s. Really colorful, stylish writing, you know, and it's perfect for an episodic TV series. So Patrick made this film to get funding. You know, it's going to be out soon. It's a short film to get funding to hopefully have a TV series based on it. And it needs to be a TV series, right? Based in Chinatown with all these beautiful, colorful characters in a told in a very stylish way with, I can imagine, some incredible, beautiful music too, you know? So that's coming out, and I'm not sure how Patrick is going to release it. Probably, I'm assuming, on streaming, since you know, the other method for short films are film festivals, and I think in this time period, film festivals won't be happening. You know, unlike major chain theaters like AMC, film festivals don't need money, which they don't have. So I'm very excited for both those movies, Boogie and Father and Son, coming out soon.
Well, the good thing about all the projects that you've been on, it gives representation, not just to Asians, but to Asian males. Like Warrior, we have power, we have strength, right? And they're showing them shirtless. Right? And then now we have Boogie, you know, where you, besides, in addition to the father and son relationship, we have an Asian basketball player. Like we all can relate to Jeremy Lin, but now we have someone who's a little bit younger and in school, you know, and meeting up with a Black American girl, having a relationship with a Black American girl, in more current times. And then with father son, Asian detective, and I'm putting them in role and also in authority. So those are the kind of roles we need, you know, not just, you know, all these other B type roles. You know, we Asians have a place in history and in television. And I think some of the questions we're asking, how do we get more Asian representation? You know, in addition to having actors on camera, it's also important to have the Asian representation behind camera, which is what you're touching about, right? We need writers, producers, right? Film production crew, and of course, casting. We need Asian people to cast Asians, right? To understand that, you know, cultural connection. There was, I did a background work like over a year ago. We were doing a dream sequence of a Chinese wedding, and me and my friend stepped into the set and like, wow, this is so wrong. The bride's got white flowers in her hair. There's tables of 4, you know, 4 is bad. You know, it was just those little things. I was like, oh, well, obviously, Asian person didn't set up this Chinese wedding sequence set. But those are the little things that's gonna matter. You know, they don't realize that because they most likely were an Asian that set up the scene. But again, yes, we need the representation, not just on camera, in front of the camera, but behind camera. And that's what's really gonna drive up the more Asian representation. So Perry, I'm gonna give you the final word before we go.
I'm just going to say you're absolutely right, Shirley. We just need more people in creative across all the fields, whether it's producers, writers in the room, in the union, like Vic says, camera ops, lighting, grip people. That's all laborious work, and it's all, you know, it's all a craft. So and creatively, you know, wardrobe, music. We need more.
Yes.
And you know, the thing is, we're out there. We just need to get our foot in the door a little more.
Mm-hmm.
But thank you so much for Ajam, Randall at Ajam, and Shirley, and everybody who came and just to hang out. You know, thank you so much.
Well, you know, before you, I'm gonna get a screenshot of everybody on the screen and see how we can. Let me see. Can I do that? Screenshot. Yeah. Awesome. Where did Perry go? Is he there?
You see me waving?
Wait, let's see.
No, you got to do the.
Oh.
You don't see me waving? I'm in my top corner.
There you go. There you go. It's just like it's like Brady Bunch times 10. You know, on the screen.
Hey, while Shirley is taking this picture, Perry, it's June. Hi.
Hi, June.
I want to give props to the women on the show.
Completely.
I just found it fascinating, the roles that the 2 women had. because it in so many ways, the whole thing about prostitution we hear about, but Mai Ling's role was like, wow, she's the head of the tongue kind of thing. And I thought that was so relevant for today. Um, and the other thing that I thought was very interesting, everyone's talking about really serious stuff, but I'm talking about the little bit of the creative stuff. The costumes.
Mhm.
That was fascinating. They're beautiful, but I wanted to learn a little bit more about the costume because, like, the costume for Mai Ling and Atoy, I thought that was a little different. I don't know whether there's a reason for it on the creativity side, but and the men in their three-piece black suit. I mean, you know, it was like I love the whole costume thing, but I was just curious about like the design.
You know, if anybody wants to go on a little longer, I'm happy to answer that. Or you know, I won't be offended if people need to leave. You can just check out. You know,
Have it
but
really till like 9:20ish, I think.
yeah, but I'll answer June's question. I was really excited to hear that the directors wanted a very fresh look at how cool Asians are. You know, the producers, Justin Lin, Shannon Lee, and Jonathan Tropper, they all knew that they wanted a very beautiful, stylish show that was very current. You know, even though it's based in the 1870s, it's a show made today about the 1870s, you know? And so, and also we can have, you know, Bruce Lee was cool, right? You look at all his fashion outside, he was just a cool dude of the 70s, you know? And this was to be in that spirit of coolness, you know? And it took a while for them to find the right tone for the women, you know, that they were actually, you could tell they were trying things out as they were shooting, and that they were talking about it. And Olivia and who plays the toy, and Diane who plays Mai Ling would go, oh no, I have to do a 6 a.m. calling so that they could try out these costume ideas, you know, so they could try things out because they don't know that they try until they try it on the actors, and then they get it on the set, and then they go, oh, you know, everything takes time. And it was very important for them to get the women right, because the women were very important, you know, what they represent in the show, you know, how they fight patriarchy and misogyny, and you know, and how they get around it, you know, that benefits them, is really important in the show, and we need to be on their side, you know. And I always thought, yeah, you know, Vogue can have a fashion spread on a toy and Mai Ling, right? How cool would that be? You
Two
know,
badass women, man.
yeah,
I
and they're a badass, you know, they
That's why I had
represent.
my agenda.
Yeah,
Going out at night and slaying people over a sword.
and I
love
call the
that.
hop way.
I just love the way that they put that in there for women. You know,
Yeah,
they're not the women that walk two steps behind the men. You know,
Right,
who are
right.
out there kicking ass. You know,
You-
and I just love that. Oh, and my husband said the makeup is amazing. Oh, you know, after they got beaten up, a toy.
Oh yeah, I saw it. Yeah.
That's amazing.
yeah. I was there filming. I wasn't supposed to be on set that day. Also, I wasn't scheduled, but I went to watch the filming because I knew it was going to be really gruesome, you know, the way they do things. And be interesting for you to know that the makeup, the special effects, all that blood and scar and beheading and amputations, it's a group of women.
Ah, yay, women.
Yeah, right. I'm working on a little documentary on them also, like the one I did for the South African Chinese, because they were so interesting. They were like these just very humble, very artistic, crafty women who were going around taking notes, taking pictures, and then making molds and mixing blood, you know? They're fascinating. They were so sweet. They were like the sweetest, you know, people around. And then like suddenly they hold it, they're holding a head, you know?
You know, every aspect of the warrior was amazing. The set, amazing. Costume, amazing. The actors, amazing.
Yeah.
Like everything was amazing. The storyline, everything.
You know, the first day I stepped on the set of the Chinatown, I was just uh, I was speechless because I'd never seen just an amazing, you know, accurate depiction
Yeah.
of a period set. I mean, even the fish was real. after 2 days it stank, you know, and the dried squid hanging was real dried squid, you know, and the fruit and the lettuce was real, you know, like they were like it was real. The set was real, you know, everything worked. The carts, you push it, and that was one of the reasons why they chose South Africa, was they knew that it would they can do it at a low budget for you know HBO. And these people, they were very talented. Again, when Vic was talking about training people, you can get in a union now. We can train you now. Part of the reason HBO was there and got a tax break on shooting was that they had to train the South African crew to work at a higher level, at Hollywood standards. And so all the crew were, you know, black crew people, and they were great. They were so gung ho about learning.
The extras that were they flown in from other? Because
That's
they
what
were so
I
many
mentioned
from
earlier.
Chinatown.
I was surprised that there were so many Chinese extras. They're all original. They came off the boats like in America. You know, they speak Toisan, a lot of them. And then there were also students and waiters. People were like, "Oh, I'm a waiter. I just came because they called my restaurant. They were looking for an extra." So, they're around. You know, there's small little streets of several Chinese restaurants and grocery stores and malls, like the contemporary American Chinatown is a mall. So there's a mall in South Africa with a Chinese area, you know. So they put flyers up looking for background. And some people were like pre-med students who came, you know, sitting around. But they were there. Yeah. Anyway, why don't we take one more question if somebody has one more question?
Anybody have one more question? Oh, there was a question from someone who had to leave early. His name was Cody.
I see Norm has a question again.
Is that maybe he left his hand up?
Norm left it.
Oh,
No?
This is Cody's question. He said he liked to ask about the depth of research that the showrunners did about the tongs and your personal experience with the tongs, if any.
Yeah, well, my father belonged to a Tong, you know, but you know, again, people have a misunderstanding of the word, right?
Right.
In Chinese, it's association. You know, everybody's family belongs to association, so there are good associations. Most of them were good. There were a few that were like participated in nefarious activities, you know, to stay alive and to gain power. So those notorious tongs like the Hop Sing and Sui Sing and those things, they were the ones that, you know, started to bring in prostitutes and deal in heroin. But they still participated in the other Tong, you know, work, like sending the deceased body back home and things like that. They still took care of their members in traditional ways. So my father was in a Tong, in a traditional Tong in Chinatown in San Francisco. The Youngs were not a big clan, so it was with another Tong. I can't remember, but they shared, you know.
Yeah, combined.
Yeah. So, but I would say that the writers did the research really well.
Mm-hmm.
Like they knew all the laws. They in some ways they knew more about his history, some of the history than I did, you know, because they read a lot and they had researchers. The writers had researchers researching for them, you know, in order to write. Like when the researchers found something interesting, they went, "Oh, look, six companies. Why don't we write the 6 companies into them?" And I was like, "What's the 6 companies?" Oh, the 6 companies was a powerful conglomerate of 6 Chinese companies that started to help Chinatown in the times of need when the Americans were you know, government was, you know, wouldn't support the Chinese, right? They would step up and say, "You need to help our people," otherwise, you know. So I didn't know, you know. So the writers were really, really good.
Mm-hmm. Well, we're going to end on one final on a request, if you can. Someone's asking if you can play the flute before we go, Harry. You have it.
You know, I wish I could, but it's kind of late here.
Oh.
And my family's in the other room, and they're always like, "You play the flute all day. You can't play at night."
They're probably saying, "Oh, there goes Dad again playing."
Yeah, right. But I thank you for asking, whoever it is.
Yeah, that was Judy. That was Judy that was asking.
Oh, thank you, Judy. You know, I think that I have a YouTube state of young flutes at YouTube with a lot of flute samples that I part of my business, but some of it is creative, and I make what I call video meditations. Like I made one for Corky Lee recently, and you can hear my flute there. Thank you for asking.
All right, if there's no final questions, we are going to wrap it up. I want to say thank you to everyone joining in and participating and asking all these fabulous questions. And of course, to our special guest, Perry Young. We're going to be looking forward and seeing you at in Boogie and Father's Son when that gets released. And when you come through Chinatown, we'll have dim sum again because indoor dining is going up to 30% now. So, well, thank you so much. I don't know, my editor's still here, Randall, at AsAmNews. Okay.
Thank you, Randall. There's Randall. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. And it is recorded. So once I get it up together, you know, I put it up on YouTube. Well, I'll share the link on the page and I'll send it off to Perry as well. All right. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for joining in. Have a great night.
Thank you.